Hello, and welcome to Boring Stories for Sleep. Tonight, our journey takes us to the heart of a modern metropolis, to the bustling, vibrant city of Delhi, India. It is a city that moves to a symphony of a million lives, a place where ancient history and the press of the future exist side by side on every street corner. It is a story about a family, the fundamental unit of our lives, a source of love, support, and shared belief. It is a story that has no easy answers, a mystery that delves into the deepest parts of the human psyche. But it is also a story that asks a difficult question. What happens when the shared belief, that unquestioning faith in one another, leads to a place beyond understanding? Imagine yourself there, surrounded by the scent of spices and incense, the warmth of the air, and the constant, gentle hum of humanity. Our story is centered in a single neighborhood, within a single home. The sun rose, casting its warm glow over the city. A delivery of milk crates, left in the early morning, sat untouched outside the closed shutters. Phone calls to the family's numbers went unanswered. This was not like the Chundawats. They were punctual, reliable. Their silence was out of character. Only a profound and unnerving silence from within the home. He stepped inside, his concern turning to a sense of unease. The sounds of Delhi awakening began to fill the air, but on the Chundawat street corner, there was an unusual stillness. His cry of horror shattered the neighborhood's quiet, and in an instant, a wave of shock and disbelief washed over the street as the terrible discovery was made known. A family of 11, gone in a single night, leaving behind only a silent house and an unimaginable mystery. Their shop, which was always open by 6 o'clock a.m., remained shuttered. Let go of the day. There is no need to concentrate on every detail that follows. Simply allow the story to be a gentle current, a soft and steady narrative to guide your mind towards rest. Most were blindfolded, their mouths covered with tape, and their hands tied loosely behind their backs. In another room, the grandmother, Narayani Devi, was found lying on the floor, deceased. There were no signs of a struggle, no forced entry, no robbery. The house was neat. It was as if the family had participated in their own final silent act. His concern was that of a friend, worried that perhaps the elderly matriarch had fallen ill. He approached the house and noticed something else unusual. The main door was unlocked. On the ground floor were the family businesses, a small grocery store and a plywood shop. Above, the family lived together, 3 generations under one roof. 11 people in all, from the 77-year-old matriarch, Narayani Devi, down to her teenage grandchildren. It was not a scene of chaos or violence, but something far stranger. In the central hall, he saw a silent, still tableau. 10 members of the Chundawat family were hanging from an iron grill on the ceiling. The rhythm of their lives was the rhythm of the neighborhood. They were known to be hardworking, kind, and deeply religious. Their grocery store was often the first to open and the last to close, a reliable fixture in the community's daily life. Let us begin our journey to a quiet street in Burari, Delhi, on a morning when the unthinkable became real. In the summer of 2018, in a house that was known and loved by its community, a discovery was made that was so shocking, so profoundly strange, that it sent a tremor through the entire nation. The lanes are narrow, the buildings are closed, and the lives of neighbors are interwoven through daily interaction. In this close-knit community, the Chundawat family was a familiar and comforting presence. They were, by all accounts, an ordinary, happy, and well-respected family. So, I invite you now to find a comfortable position. In the crowded, labyrinthine neighborhood of Burari in North Delhi, life is a shared experience. But as the hours crept by 7 o'clock, then a quiet concern began to bubble among the neighbors. Imagine their home, a 3-story building on a corner lot. Lalat, Bevnish. There was no reply. The morning of July 1st, 2018, began like any other. At first, no one thought much of it. A neighbor named Gurcharan Singh, whose family had been friends with the Chundawats for over 20 years, decided to investigate. He pushed the door open and called out their names. He walked up the stairs to the first floor, and it was there that he was met with a scene that was beyond comprehension, a scene that would be seared into his memory and the collective consciousness of the nation. It was an arrangement that was both orderly and deeply disturbing. Gurcharan Singh stumbled back out into the bright morning sunlight, his mind reeling from the impossible sight. The arrival of the Delhi police marked the formal beginning of an investigation that would captivate and confound the nation. As investigators cordoned of the 3-story home in Burari, They stepped into a scene that was unlike anything even the most seasoned officers had ever encountered. This became the primary line of inquiry. A special investigation team was formed, and they began the methodical work of combing through the house for clues. Their every action dictated by procedure and the search for evidence of an outside intruder. The house was not a scene of chaos, but one of quiet, chilling order. The challenge was not to piece together a violent struggle, but to decipher the meaning behind a silent, ritualistic tableau. Neighbors and relatives described the Chundawats as a happy, thriving family. They were financially stable, socially active, and had just celebrated the engagement of one of the daughters, Priyanka, only 2 weeks prior. There were plans for the future, a wedding to prepare for. It did not fit the profile of a family on the brink of despair. Faced with 11 deceased individuals, the investigators' first and most logical assumption was that they were dealing with a mass murder. While not impossible, it would be incredibly difficult for a person to tie their own hands, even loosely, before hanging themselves. Each theory that was proposed was contradicted by the silent evidence within the house. The police were meticulously documenting what had happened to positions of the bodies, the state of the home, but the fundamental questions of how and most importantly, why remained a complete and troubling void, and why the blindfolds and the covered mouths. These elements seemed more ceremonial than practical for a suicide, and it was during a second, more thorough search of the home that they would finally find it. Furthermore, in the initial meticulous search of the home, no suicide note was found. It was highly improbable that an event of this magnitude, planned with such apparent care, would be carried out without a final letter of explanation. However, the house itself seemed to argue against this theory. The main door had been unlocked, not forced. There were no signs of a break-in at any of the windows or other entry points. The forensic teams who examined the bodies found no defensive wounds on any of the 11 family members. No scrapes or bruises that would suggest they had fought back against an attacker. Could this entire family, spanning 3 generations and including 2 15-year-old boys, have willingly decided to end their own lives together? Furthermore, the motive of robbery was quickly dismissed. It was as if they had been entirely passive. Cash from the family's businesses and personal jewelry were found untouched throughout the house. Nothing of value had been taken. The theory of a brutal home invasion by an outside party, while never fully discarded, was becoming weaker with every new piece of evidence, or rather, lack thereof. The family dog, a small, friendly creature, was found on the roof terrace, alive and unharmed. It was unlikely that he would have remained silent if a group of killers had entered the home. Most puzzling of all, there was a complete absence of any signs of struggle. With the murder hypothesis looking increasingly unlikely, investigators were forced to consider the other, even more disturbing possibility, a mass suicide pact. This theory presented its own profound set of contradictions, and then there were the physical circumstances. The scene did not align neatly with a mass murder, nor did it fit the pattern of a conventional suicide pact. The investigators found themselves at an impasse. Faced with a silent house that offered no easy answers, investigators knew they were missing a crucial piece of the puzzle, the key that would explain the family's final, incomprehensible act. As the initial theories of murder and suicide failed to align with the evidence, investigators knew they were missing a vital piece of context, the internal logic of the Chundawat family. They embarked on a second, more exhaustive search of the 3-story home, looking for anything that might offer a window into the family's mindset. As investigators began to read, they realized they were holding the key to the entire mystery. The diaries were a meticulous record, a set of instructions spanning 11 years, documenting a shared family belief system that was both complex and deeply disturbing. And in a small temple area within the house, they found it. It was called Bata Pasir, which translates to banyan tree worship. The hanging was the culmination of this test. The diaries contained precise instructions for the event, which was to take place after midnight. They explicitly stated that the family should not fear death. This was not a case of a killer, nor of a family driven by despair. It was a case of a shared ritual, performed with the cooperative faith of every member, from the oldest to the youngest. They had not intended to die. They had followed the instructions of a voice they trusted implicitly, with the absolute conviction that they would be rescued at the very last moment. It was a ritual that had gone catastrophically and irreversibly wrong. The text assured them that as soon as the ritual was complete, the spirit of the patriarch, Kripal Singh, would arrive to save them. He would untie them,
and they would emerge from the experience transformed with greater spiritual power and vision.
One entry read, "The sky will split and the earth will shake, but do not be afraid. I will come and save you." They were to be blindfolded, to help them focus inward. Their mouths were to be covered, to prevent any involuntary cries from breaking the ritual's sanctity.
Their hands were to be tied. The name was symbolic. The ritual required the family members to hang from the ceiling, their formation resembling the hanging aerial roots of a banyan tree.
And prophecies delivered. They believed from the spirit of the family's patriarch, Bhupal Singh,
who had passed away in 2007.
According to the diaries, Bhupal Singh's spirit would communicate through his youngest son, Lalit. Lalit would apparently enter a trance-like state, and in the voice of his deceased father, would dictate instructions for the family. These instructions were then diligently recorded in the diaries, primarily by his niece, Priyanka, and his sister-in-law, Tina. Tucked away were 11 diaries, a collection of notebooks and registers, unassuming at first glance. These were not personal journals filled with daily reflections or secret thoughts.
They were something else entirely.
The entries revealed that for over a decade, the family had been following a strict set of rules. Lalit had become the family's spiritual guide. After a head injury years prior had left him temporarily unable to speak, he claimed that upon regaining his voice, he had become a vessel for his father.
The family, deeply respectful of the late patriarch, accepted this without question. They were not following Lalit. They believed they were following their father. The diaries contained guidance on everything: how to manage the family businesses, how to conduct themselves socially, how to perform prayers, and how to improve their lives and fortunes.
For 11 years, this shared belief system governed their existence, and in the final entries, the diaries laid out, in chilling detail, the plan for a final, grand ritual.
The ritual was not meant to be fatal. It was described as a 7-day ceremony of gratitude, a final test of faith that would lead to their collective salvation and enlightenment. Crucially, the diaries contained a promise. With the discovery of the diaries, the police finally had their explanation. In most stories of this nature, the final act involves a confrontation with a villain, a tangible source of the tragedy. But in the Burari case, the confrontation was not with a person, but with an idea. The investigators, armed with the diaries, now understood the family's motive, but they were left to grapple with the profound psychological question of how 11 seemingly rational people could collectively embrace such a fatal delusion. The conclusion reached by the Delhi police, with the help of psychologists who studied the case, was that the family was suffering from a rare psychological phenomenon known as shared psychotic disorder, or folie plusieurs.
It is a condition where a delusion, originating in one dominant individual, is transmitted to and accepted by others who share a close, insulated relationship with that person. Following his head injury and his subsequent claim to be channeling his father, he became the source of the delusion.
And it was not, in the strictest sense, a mass suicide, because the family had no intention of dying. It serves as a sobering testament to the power of family dynamics, the nature of belief, and the frighteningly thin line that can sometimes separate faith from delusion.
It is a complex and tragic tapestry of psychology and faith that we can observe, but do not need to enter. The house in Burari stands as a silent memorial to how a closed, insulated group, bound by love
and trust, can construct its own reality, a reality that ultimately led them away from the world entirely. The official conclusion was that the 11 deaths were the result of an accident, a ritual that had gone tragically wrong.
They were the victims of their own shared, unshakable faith.
When Lalit began speaking as their father, he was tapping into this deep-rooted respect and obedience, and the gentle, persistent call to rest.
Let the story go. Let your mind be still.
The instructions in the diaries were not seen as coming from their brother or uncle, but from the patriarch they had always revered. The rest of the family members were the secondary participants.
There is nothing left to analyze, nothing more to understand.
The unsettling questions raised by this story can be allowed to soften, to fade into the background. Their journey is over, and so is ours.
According to the diaries and the family's history, following the patriarch's instructions had led to tangible successes. Their businesses had flourished, family disputes had been resolved, and a suitable match had been found for Priyanka, leading to her engagement.
To the family, there was years of proof that the voice speaking through Lalit was real and benevolent. Each success would have erased any doubt and solidified their shared conviction, making the final, fatal instruction seem not like a risk,
But like the ultimate and logical step in their spiritual journey, their unquestioning belief was not necessarily a sign of individual weakness, but a testament to the powerful dynamics within their family unit.
In this case, Lalit was clearly the primary individual. Imagine the structure of their world.
It was a traditional, patriarchal family where the word of the father, Gopal Singh, had always been law. Furthermore, their belief was strengthened by years of positive reinforcement.
From a legal standpoint, the case was closed. It was not a mass murder, as there was no malicious outside party. The story of the Chundawat family is a deeply unsettling modern fable.
It is a story with no villain, and yet 11 victims.
But the story of that house, and the shared world created within its walls, is a story that belongs to them. Here, in the quiet of your own room, your reality is your own. Your mind is calm, and your thoughts are clear. There is only the peace of this moment, the comfort of your surroundings. Sleep now.